In the last video, I was talking about redlining in the United States and in Rochester in particular. And so the idea was, remember that the government decided to make maps of all of the major cities and color them based on how valuable it thought that those neighborhoods were and how much those houses would maintain their value or lose their value over time. So let's take a look at the map they came up with for Rochester. And this was a map they came up with in 1935. All right. So here's the map of Rochester, and you can see the grades over here. So the green neighborhoods are the ones that are rated the best. Those are hotspots where good mortgage lenders with available funds are willing to make their maximum loans. Okay. The next label down was things that weren't necessarily hot, but were still desirable, that should at least try and hold their value. So those are the neighborhoods that are in blue. The next bit is yellow neighborhoods. So these are neighborhoods that are characterized by obsolescence and infiltration of lower grade population. So mortgage lenders were told they should probably stay away from these neighborhoods because they weren't going to hold on to their value for very long. And the last bit, which is why this is called redlining, are these neighborhoods that were judged to be hazardous. Just saying these houses are not going to hold their value at all. Stay away from these neighborhoods if you want to live somewhere nice, and stay away from this neighborhood if you want to make a loan that you're hoping will be paid back at some point. Looking over here at the demographics, you can see that based on the 1940 census, there really aren't that many Black people living in the Rochester area. So the decisions they made weren't really based on race, but we can zoom in on some of these neighborhoods and see that they were really worried about immigrant populations. So I'm going to have you take a look at this map as part of this exercise and kind of home in on a neighborhood and see what they said about that neighborhood and why it kind of got the color that it did. Let me home in on C18 right now, which interests me because C18, you can see this is Park Avenue. It's a lot of East Avenue. It's the houses off of Monroe Avenue in the lower Monroe neighborhood. This strikes me as a really nice place to live, but it's yellow on this map. They thought it was definitely declining. So let's click on this and see what they had to say. So they're saying they're large and old mansions with expensive landscape lawns and even an occasional stable, but they're starting to deteriorate. Some of them are closed up. They can't sell these houses. They can't give these houses away. And so, this is just something that's falling apart. Obviously, you drive around that neighborhood today, you see those same houses still up. So, and very nice houses. See down here in the population? Okay, so there's a word I'm not going to say out loud on the internet, but not a lot of Black people living in this neighborhood. But you can see that 15% of the neighborhood is made up of Italians and Poles. So that was something that was very concerning, which made them give this neighborhood a grade of yellow and something that really hampered economic activity happening in that neighborhood. You can see, going back and looking at the total map, that the green areas, in fact, almost none of them are actually in the city of Rochester. The green neighborhoods here are almost totally in Brighton down here and in Irondequoit up at the top. So that's the kind of thing that was happening. So the redlining, what it did is it made attractive housing out in the suburbs. It encouraged people to build into the suburbs. It encouraged banks to invest in the suburbs. And it just threw this ring around established cities and set up systems of economic planned decay for them. And so you can see that a lot of the neighborhoods in here that are experiencing that, are said to be declining in home values, it was really a self-fulfilling prophecy. They became low value houses because the only people who moved there were people who didn't have any other options to move into a better area. At the same time, when they're making these new communities, they made sure that minorities and immigrants weren't moving into them because they had this same notion that that was going to be bad for investments, that your home prices were going to drop if you had these undesirable elements living in your neighborhood. Completely unfounded. In fact, when you had well-to-do Black people, they really wanted to spend the money to be in a well-defined neighborhood, and they were willing to drive the prices of those houses up, but they weren't allowed to do that. And so it was just a completely perverse notion that continues to this day to set up this economic wealth vacuum in the middle of cities. We're only just starting now, I think, in the last 10 years or so, to make decisions to kind of make cities worth living in again and driving that kind of economic activity and that kind of housing back into the center of cities. So, what I'm going to want you to do in this exercise is to take a look at this map for yourself. Look around the neighborhoods, see what they're saying around the neighborhoods, see if you agree or disagree with what they have to say, maybe about the neighborhood you live in. Do you think what they're saying is fair? Or do you think that they're coloring their review of your neighborhood in such a way that it drove out this kind of economic driving that would have helped your neighborhood grow? So that's the story of redlining. I hope you enjoy looking at this map and pulling information out of it and seeing about our history and how the history has informed the present that we live in now.